sending this out to all those that have registered the recording. And then that way, if you have additional follow-up questions, we can do that at the end of the session. So I'm just briefly going to cover a few things that have developed over the last few days. The first thing I want to talk about is the additional funds that have recently passed. So again, there'll be additional funds that are added to the PPP and the SBA funds. On the slide in front of you, you can see where some of those allocated dollars will be going. Again, in this time, it's really important for our businesses to be speaking with their financial institutes. Locally, we know the U.S. Bank and Wood Trust Bank are participating in those programs and can help. If you aren't sure if your business is your financial institute is participating in these programs, please reach out to them. They will have the best tips and ideas to really help you with these programs. Even with the PPP program being closed and they're kind of waiting on those funds, you can still start some of these application processes. And then once they are taking applications again, it's easier for that information to be pushed out and you ready to go on the business end. And then with the EIDL emergency grant, I have been checking every couple hours, and they still are waiting for those funds before they open up those grant applications again. So we're kind of in the lieu of this weird time where the funds have been granted, but they're waiting to receive those funds before they can formally accept applications. So again, please speak with your financial institutes. If you need to consult accounting firms, do so as well. We think that's best. They can give you the best idea of which ones you should be applying for and what works best for your business, because everybody is a little bit different. So just a reminder on those, and we're hoping those dollars can come directly to some of the business here that have applied. I wanted to talk about some training opportunities and webinars that are coming up. So UW Extension is hosting a series of opportunities where you can learn about business, entrepreneurship, but beyond that, they have some webinars talking about some of the relief options for small businesses. In front of you, again, there's a link, and this will also be sent out with the video recording, but these links will take you to their website, and they have a whole bunch of different videos and webinars that have been recorded that you can attend that can help you during this time. As it's a time to be creative. We want to keep our minds learning and going as we do the slow reopen, which I know Christy will be talking a lot more about, but we want to make sure we're being innovative and creative so we can open the business community. One final thing I kind of want to touch on, which I know Christy, again, will be covering a lot of the safer at home order, is WMC, which is the Wisconsin Manufacturers and Commerce Association, has put forth the Back to Business plan. This plan is an opportunity that they can really look at different regions opening, so based solely on the impact in that region that's being exposed by COVID-19. So instead of looking at us as a whole entire state for reopening plan, they're suggesting a reopening on region base. So there's some material there. Again, this is just a proposal. This is not anything that's set in stone, but we're hoping that they take this into consideration and support this, as then we can, as smaller communities and more rural regions, we can participate with that. So those are just a few of the brief resources that have come up in the last few days. And again, a lot of the additional resources with the SBA funds, the PPP, and unemployment resources, those are all listed at the end of the session, at the end of the PowerPoint. And that is just all I had today.
Hi, Angel. We did get a question on the chat for you. Somebody is asking about the timeline for EIDL. They had submitted theirs on the 6th and haven't received any information as of yet.
Sure. So at this point, we haven't heard any updates. If you go to the website right now, what they've said, it's if you have already applied, your application is in process, and it's first come, first serve. So say they reopen today by chance, which again, they're not at this time, but if they open and I applied today, those businesses that have already previously applied, they get that first access to those funds that are available. We think that the reason why there hasn't been more communication is they're waiting on those additional funds so they can reach out to those businesses who applied, but the funds were exhausted before they could close that platform. So we have not heard a definitive timeline on that yet. If we see anything or hear anything additionally, we'd be happy to communicate that out. We just have not received anything at this time. But know that if you have already applied, you do not have to reapply, and that your application is sitting in there and they're waiting for funds at this point.
All right, that's all the questions we have for you for right now, Angel. Thank you.
All right, well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Christy Egge and work for the Wood County Health Department, currently serving as the Public Information Officer during the pandemic that we're facing. So to start off, wanted to give you guys an update on our numbers, both for Wood County and for the state of Wisconsin. This is something that we update every single day and post to both the Wood County website as well as our social media Facebook page. We've been holding strong at only two positive test results, with both of those individuals recovered. We have 14 negative test results. The state has 5,356 positive cases of COVID and 54,573 negative cases, with a total of 262 deaths. So we know that Safer at Home is working, and we know that it has saved lives. It's protected our healthcare workers and our critical employees, and it's prevented hospitals from being overrun. We also know that, according to a recent Associated Press survey, that most Americans remain overwhelmingly in favor of the Safe at Home orders and other efforts to slow the spread of coronavirus. Many of you are aware of a recent outbreak that happened in Green Bay, and it's easy to see through that outbreak how fast this virus spreads and how fast this virus can spread in our community. Brown County is now second in line of cases in the state, only next to that of Milwaukee. So they have surpassed Dane County. While I say all of this not to scare you, I just want to reiterate that we do feel that Safer at Home is working, and we want to thank you all for your willingness to continue working with us on this. One of the ways that us at the local level are helping to prepare businesses to be able to open up slowly turn that dial is by putting together a toolkit. We've been working on that all week, and we hope to be able to have that to our local businesses and organizations in the very near future. That toolkit includes checklists for your businesses and your organizations, as well as checklists for your employees and guidance on how to reopen safely. We care a lot about the businesses here. We want businesses to be open, and we don't want to have things dial backwards again. So we want to keep people healthy. So more to come on that business toolkit. Like I said, that'll also include signage for your business, and hopefully potentially even some funds to help offset other costs of things that we recommend in the guidance. We know that the governor, as of last week, extended the Safer at Home order. That order now, I have a few items bulleted out of what that order includes. Public libraries are now able to offer curbside pickup of their library materials. We know golf courses may be open with restrictions, including making sure that payment is done over the phone. Non-essential businesses are also able to do more, including curbside pickup, deliveries, mailings, etc. And our arts and crafts stores may offer curbside pickup for necessary materials to make face masks and other personal protective equipment. And aesthetic and optional exterior lawn landscaping, those kind of things are able to be, are now allowed as well. So Angel talked about the Badger bounce back. It's exciting to know that there's a plan in place, and we know that before moving into the phased approach, we need to have items in place at the local level. So I have those listed out for you all. Increase in lab capacity and testing, an increase in contact tracing, support for an isolation and quarantine facility. We need to have increased healthcare capacity and increased availability of personal protective equipment. The decision to move from Safer at Home into phase 1 through phase 3 is all guided by data. And so you'll hear more and more about that as the weeks come. I'll do my best to provide information for you on that. We realize that with more testing, we will find more positives. As a health department, we have been saying that there likely are many positives in our community, but due to what the CDC's recommendations were for testing based on a number of reasons, and for a number of reasons, not everyone who presented with symptoms at healthcare facilities were tested. And so our numbers are low, but in order for us to understand what we're dealing with, more and more tests need to be had. And so we know we're going to have more and more positives, which then increases the amount of contact tracing we have to do at a local level. You can advance. So what are we doing locally to prepare for Badger bounce back? We're doing a lot of things. We're hopeful that we have been here. We're your frontline staff, and I know my direct supervisor, Sue Kunferman, our health officer, local health officer, as well as a team. Our entire team is been all hands on deck. And when people have questions, we're doing our best to answer those questions in a very timely fashion. We know health systems are ramping up to do more testing, and I mentioned the contact tracing. We have recently trained an additional 10 people in our department to do that contact tracing. We also have been working on an isolation facility plan, and we are nearly finalized with that plan. And we have continued to, through the pandemic, seek donations of PPE as well as disseminate those donations, which includes picking those donations up from individuals so they do not need to be doing travel. With all this being said, the public should continue to follow steps to avoid exposure. So no social gatherings, including all the things I have listed. Really no visitors, no sleepovers, parties, anything of that nature. Make sure you're washing your hands, covering your coughs and sneezes, avoid touching your face. And again, stay home and limit non-essential travel when at all possible.
Hi, Christy. We do have a question for you. Our participant is asking, Clark County seems to have growth in positive results over recent weeks. Given its proximity, how might that affect Wood County? And do you think the exponential growth in Brown County is likely to affect Wood County?
Those are great questions, and my answer is yes. We were well aware of what was going on in Clark County, and we're carefully monitoring that. As if individuals from Wood County would have been exposed to those individuals, we would be doing contact tracing for those positives. One of the reasons, similar to Brown County, and one of the reasons why we're really focused on reducing non-essential travel is when people are traveling in between counties, in between communities, that's when the spread happens. And as you can see with Clark County, where they had an increase based on an outbreak there, and then again, the most recent really extreme outbreak in Brown County, it happened so quickly. And so I do believe that is impacting Wood County potentially. If it hasn't, it will, because it is really only a matter of time until we start to see more and more cases here. As well as many of you may have heard this in the past, but with pandemics, we know that there's often more than one spike in cases, and in many cases, the second spike is worse than the first spike. So we're just doubling down on making sure we're providing everyone with the best guidance possible, giving businesses and organizations the right tools to make sure that they stay safe and their employees stay safe, as well as people who are frequenting their establishments.
Thank you, Christy. The only other thing that we want to mention is Macmillan Library. Just wanted to put a shout out there that they are going to start curbside service on Monday, April 27th, and they have more information on their website. They're doing a soft opening since it's a brand new service for them.
Thanks, Angel and Christy, for the added information. Again, Kyle Kearns, Community Development Director for the City of Wisconsin Rapids. I wanted to touch upon briefly, regionally and locally, what we're doing from an economic development standpoint. There was a economic development roundtable meeting this week, just a few days ago. It was led by the county, and there were members from different cities as well as different groups and organizations. Generally, different strategies were discussed for moving forward during recovery, what seems to have worked in other communities or is working around the nation. Business concerns were discussed, help updates were provided, and generally we discussed again the resources that are available. Many of them have already been discussed during this briefing or provided previously. I will note that the regional group will be meeting weekly to share ideas and brainstorm strategies. The best way for that information to get out to businesses or citizens would likely be through local reps on that roundtable group. And again, I would serve as the local rep here with the City of Wisconsin Rapids. And more locally, we do have a local economic recovery task force. Up to this point, the task force has primarily been internal members, and a member of the chamber, Angel, has served. And we've discussed some initial different programs and responses, and more so just consolidating resources and ensuring that citizens and businesses have access to those resources in a one-stop shop, and the chamber website has been serving in that capacity thus far. The other thing I do want to note that internally, the city is discussing options regarding a business program, business grant program, but I do want to stress that details are not finalized at this point. If a program does become created, know that city approval through Common Council would be required, and that certainly takes some time, but further specifics with regard to any program would likely be available next week. And also know that we are looking to expand that local economic recovery task force in terms of membership next week. I think a first meeting of a larger group will be scheduled for late next week, and many of those businesses or organizations that have reached out to serve on that local task force will be invited to participate in that meeting. So look for an update early next week for that local recovery task force. The last thing I want to mention, well, one of the last things is during economic recovery, there are different programs that will become available and or are available now, one of which is the Central Wisconsin Economic Development Fund. This fund was discussed in past briefings. It is basically a loan program through CWED that can assist with working capital, inventory purchase, and so forth, disaster relief. And the floor for that program from an interest rate standpoint is 3%, but there is ongoing discussion with the organization in being able to tailor some of their programs to make them more available and more interesting to businesses as we pursue recovery here. Lastly, I want to note that city operations within City Hall remain the same. The clerk's office is the only department that is open to the public. The rest of City Hall is closed, but certainly we're delivering the same level of service with regards to our fire department and our police department and other departments that are working internally at City Hall or remotely, just unavailable to the public. So certainly, if you're looking to get a building permit or need assistance from the Public Works Department, you can certainly reach out to those individuals, and those contacts via remote means, email or phone will be the best way that we can respond. That is all I have, and I think at this point we will we'll look to see if we have any more questions and respond to a few questions that we received in a survey that the Chamber issued a few weeks ago. And I'll kick that off here first with a question in regards to property tax payments. I will note that the city earlier this week did approve a resolution to support the relaxation of those deadlines for those tax payments, but ultimately the decision lies with the county, and the county at this point has opted not to adopt a resolution. Therefore, those tax payments will remain the same with the same installment deadlines that have historically existed. With that, I will let Emily go through any of the additional questions that we've received in the chat or any that we've received in the survey. And also, if you do have a question and you can unmute yourself, feel free to do so, and we can respond to those accordingly.
All right, so I will start with a question on the chat. This individual is curious what the thoughts of the health department are on things like the Rafters drive-through community experience event on May 1st.
We were aware of this event, and while we are not in favor of this, we have been in touch with them, and they have assured us that no one will be leaving their cars. And so I believe the event will still be happening.
Okay, so our next question was submitted in advance. As a member of the VFW, they rent facilities to the public. They wondered, would they be able to rent their facility out if the customer kept the number of attendees to a certain number, or is that the responsibility of the renter to keep track of the number of attendees?
So in regards to businesses having meetings and renting out conference room or other space, we are at this time still standing behind if the meetings are deemed essential and people are not able to meet virtually, then a minimum of 6 feet physical distancing needs to be between meeting participants, as well as keeping the meeting participant to a total of 9 at this time. Per the governor's safer at home order, groups of 10 or more are not able to gather. We also recommend that whenever possible to do virtual meetings, and if conference rooms are rented and physical distancing is maintained, the room or facility needs to be cleaned in between usage. As far as who would be responsible, I'm definitely not a lawyer, so I think it depends on what your insurance states. If someone were to get sick who attended a meeting at your facility, it would all be based on either a hold harmless that you may have in place with someone that you're renting, or based on your insurance. I would say to look into that with your insurance company, but based on hopefully some of that is answered through our local health department recommendations.
All right, thank you, Christy. Our next question is, can someone explain the difference and or benefit between PPP loan and the employee retention tax credit?
This is Angel. I can go ahead and answer that. So I do want to clarify right away that between the two programs, you can only apply for one. So if you've applied for the Paycheck Protection program, you cannot apply for the employee retention tax credit as well. So the biggest difference is the Paycheck Protection program is a forgivable loan for employers that can apply through their an approved lender. Again, we mentioned earlier US Bank and Wood Trust Bank, and it can help cover that payroll cost. So for example, wages up to $100,000 in employee benefits, including state and local taxes. Additionally, the employer can also use some of the funds, 25% to cover interest on mortgage, rent, and utilities. So that's one program. Again, that's something you have to apply for. That's a many-page process that you have to do with your financial institute. With regards to the employee retention credit, this credit is a refundable payroll tax credit that employers can claim on their federal employment tax return to cover employee wages and qualified health plan expenses associated with those wages up to a certain dollar amount. Again, when you're trying to decide whether you should apply for one or should apply for the other, we say talk to your financial institute. In the resources, I included an article that kind of touches base on more specific differences and just some basic questions you need to ask yourself whether you qualify for one or the other. But really, the other item that we say is if you're really not sure and your bank's not sure, go talk to your accountants. They can work through the weeds a little bit to see what's going to be better for your business and organization, as everyone's just a little bit different. So it may be better to get one or the other. And again, to note, the employee retention credit tax also that comes later. That isn't something you immediately get. It's when you file on those quarterly taxes that's when that information and those funds can become available. So that's not something that happens right away, where after you file for the Paycheck Protection Program and the approval process goes through, then those funds can be dropped in. So there's a little bit of a weight difference between the both as well. And again, now that the funds are more available for the Paycheck Protection Program, again, working with your local financial institutes to evaluate that and get your paperwork in if you're interested in that program is highly recommended at this point to get a jump on that for your local business.
All right, thank you. The next question is, why are there so few COVID tests in Wisconsin?
So I can answer that question. Tests were originally done based on capacity of our local lab or of our labs in the state, as well as based on guidance from the Centers for Disease Control. Priority at this time was to test the critically ill and also healthcare workers. And so because of that, there was a limited number of tests, and supplies were in high demand, so supplies were limited as well. The guidelines have recently shifted now, and the CDC has recommended everyone with symptoms be tested. And so we are waiting for supplies locally to be doing more testing. And now we have lab capacity as well. And so we're hopeful that this will be trickling down to our area soon, and there will be more tests happening.
Thank you. So the next one we have, and it sounds like this will be a good one for you to speak to as well, Christy, is what are the best ways to restart the economy, and how do we connect people looking for work?
Yeah, I can take a stab at that, and then I definitely would look to some of our maybe Angel or Kyle as well. We definitely value our local economy and want things to dial up as safely as possible and as quick as possible. And so I mentioned in my update that we are working on a reopening plan along with the state of Wisconsin, and we're looking to provide local resources for businesses and organizations to reopen safely. So that toolkit will be provided. That'll have checklists for folks to keep and make sure that they're doing things and ready, prepared for the launch, prepared for the opening. We want to get those out to you before that even happens. And we'll also have checklists for employees so that you can ensure that your businesses can operate safely as we move into the Badger bounce back and the different phases of opening up our state.
And I'll chime in and mention that I think from a business standpoint, certainly, our economy thrives on people working, people spending money, people out in the community. And, the way I think the federal government and the state government are looking to plan for a road to recovery is to do it in a stepped fashion. So again, you've seen them take steps with the CDC and the health department here already with regards to some of the requirements. And I would think that they would continue to take steps in a slower manner rather than lifting the restriction fully. and that's how I would anticipate that we're going to have to recover. And, I think that's also dependent upon, as Christy mentioned, any spikes in cases and whether or not they have a response for spikes, which would maybe minimize then lifting restrictions and or implementing those same restrictions moving forward. So I think that's why it'll be likely handled on a day-to-day, week-to-week type basis moving forward.
This is Angel. I just kind of want to chime in a little bit about some of the best ways that we can help from a business standpoint is we know that there are some restrictions to opening businesses, but how can we be creative to still follow the rules or the regulations that are currently in place but can still open? So keeping in mind that we can open, but we need to be creative but still following that safer policy. So if you have ideas or you have suggestions or you have questions on how you can open as a business, please reach out to any of us on this call. Our contact information is listed. We want to help businesses open, but we want to do it in the safest manner possible, not only for the businesses, but the community that those businesses serve. So again, please reach out to us, as the best way to restart the economy is to do it slow and make sure that we don't have these excessive surges, because I think, as it was stated before, the worst thing that could happen is we reopen and then we have to close again because of what has happened. So we want to take every precaution, but still open businesses within those means.
Angel, we got a related question on chat. If a business would like to go to, if a business would like to go to pickup or curbside, who can help them with online ordering?
So there's some different options. I know UW Extension has some resources and some trainings on how you can set that up. They can directly call the chamber, and I can see what specifically they're looking for. Do they need to develop a website because they don't have that capacity? Is it that they have a website, but how do they put an ordering platform on it? We definitely want to be able to direct them in the right resources, and that really just depends on the exact question they're looking for. So again, the chamber is a great resource. UW Extension is a great resource, and we're happy to direct people to those resources so they can get that set up.
Wonderful, thank you. So we got a couple more questions in chat. Is Wood County the only county that allows dog grooming?
That's a great question. No, we're not the only county. The health officers, a bunch of health officers had a conversation and together decided to allow that based on the guidance provided from our office for dog groomers to be able to do curbside drop-off and pickup, as well as maintaining physical distancing inside of their facility. And so if they're not able to do that, they're not able to be open. They also have to be able to accept payments over the phone or online.
All right, thank you. Another one, kind of in the same vein, is it legal to have people sitting outside of a business eating and drinking?
Can you repeat that?
Sure. The participant asked if it's legal to have people sitting outside of a business eating or drinking.
I believe per the new orders, this is still not allowable. Businesses can offer carryout and curbside pickup, but the eating cannot be done outside of businesses or inside of businesses.
Thank you. I think I've covered all the questions on here. I had another individual just asking if we're going to be continuing weekly updates, and I would answer that right away and say that we are continuing to do the briefings.
Yeah, it'll likely be in a similar fashion, either a newsletter or a briefing electronically like this. And yeah, I apologize to those listeners. I don't believe we did either last week. But moving forward, you know, we hope to continue either via the newsletter or the electronic video here.
We'll just give you all another minute in case you're in the midst of typing a question.
One additional thing I just with this being a global pandemic, the reagent is still, like Nan had said this in the group chat, that there still is a need for reagent for the testing. And so our healthcare systems are doing an amazing job at trying to secure all the supplies that they need, but that is still a challenge as well.
This is Angel. I just want to make a note that for anyone who's attending, or if this is on the recap and you're watching the recording, please let us know any feedback that you have. If you have specific questions, please reach out to us so we can address them not only to you, but others may have those questions down the road. As we do these business briefings, we want to evolve it to the needs of the community. So the more feedback you can get us on what kind of resources you're looking for, what specific questions you have, we can keep evolving that from here.
So we got one more question. What are the thoughts around summer festivals?
This is Christy. I'm thinking you want me to answer this question. And what I can tell you right now is we don't know. It depends on a number of things and whether or not our cases continue to decrease. For the Badger bounce back, the cases need to decrease by a proportion or a percentage for 14 days before we'll move into the next phase. The first phase allows groups of 10, a second phase allows groups of 50, and the third phase allows larger groups than 50. And so each of those phases at minimum will be 2 weeks based on what we currently know, unless something changes. And so it's challenging for me to say for sure how things will look by summer. And so much of this is dependent upon when we have treatment or when we have a vaccine available to fight the disease.
Thank you for everybody that participated. I guess watch for next week. We are, if we do these briefings, we're going to look to do it midweek instead of at the end of the week to assist with some of our partners in scheduling. And I just want to thank everybody that participated, and we will have some type of contact with you next week. Anybody else have anything they'd like to add? Otherwise, thank you very much.